welcome back to my channel, and today I'm going to talk about the myth of the Gumiho and the legends behind it. So if you've been following my channel for a while, then you know that I am a young adult author, and my debut novel, Wicked Fox, is based on the myth of the Gumiho, which is a nine-tailed fox in Korean mythology that can transform into a beautiful woman in order to lure in men and prey on their energy so she can live forever. The paperback of Wicked Fox is coming out next week, and the sequel to Wicked Fox called Vicious Spirits is coming out in August. Now, the myth of the Gumiho is one of the most famous ones in Korea. It might also be because there are nine-tailed fox counterparts in both China and Japan, but I like to think it's because the idea of a nine-tailed fox who can transform into a beautiful woman and live forever is kind of pretty cool. So it definitely inspired me, and I hope that you guys will enjoy the mythology and the folklore behind Wicked Fox. Now, a Gumiho is a nine-tailed fox that appears in Korean myths and legends. It is a fox that has lived for 1,000 years and now can have the energy to shape-shift. Now, this is very similar to its Chinese and Japanese counterparts, the huli in Chinese and the kitsune in Japanese. But the thing that is mostly different is that the Gumiho almost always only transforms into a woman, and she is almost always evil. Some legends say that the Gumiho can shapeshift into anything, but every legend does say that the Gumiho can at least shapeshift into a beautiful girl or woman. She does this in order to lure in boys or human prey so that she can seduce them and then eat their hearts or livers depending on the mythology. So, some things we know about the Gumiho. She can transform into a beautiful woman. Now, in almost any story that you find about the Gumiho, she will transform into a human woman at some point or another. For example, in Transformation of a Gumiho, the Gumiho transforms into an identical likeness of a bride on her wedding day, and she tricks pretty much everyone, including the groom and the bride's own mother, into thinking that she is the bride, and she ends up marrying the groom in the bride's place. Another fact that is often said in these legends is that there is going to be something that's distinctly fox-like about the Gumiho even when she's in her human form. Now, in some of them it could be fox ears, it could be claws, or it could be the 9 tails. So in Wicked Fox, I made it the 9 tails. I thought that was just beautiful imagery. I was very much inspired by a lot of art that I see around there, including some character art from things like League of Legends and stuff like that. So I just think that the 9 tails are what make the Gumiho very distinct. But in some legends it is like ears, and in other legends it's just an essence or an aura about her. There's also a legend called The King and the Gumiho, where a king comes across a beautiful girl in the forest late at night, and in order to make sure that she is a girl and not a fox, he asks her to disrobe. However, it becomes so dark that he can't actually see her, and he's not able to tell if she is a human girl or a Gumiho in disguise. Another thing that we know from some stories is that dogs are the enemies of Gumiho, and that's because the dogs can kind of sense that they're actually a fox and not a woman. In The Maiden Who Discovered a Gumiho, the Gumiho is discovered when a hunting dog catches the scent of the Gumiho and drives it away by attacking it. Now, talking about the maiden who discovers a Gumiho, that's actually a Chinese poem about the Korean Gumiho, and that is one of the only stories where the Gumiho actually turns into a male instead of a female. So most of the time they do turn into females, but in this one Chinese poem, it is a Gumiho who turns into a boy and tricks a girl into wanting to marry him. Another fact that we know about the Gumiho is that they eat hearts or livers. Now, I personally grew up learning the story of them eating the liver, and that is why I used that in my story Wicked Fox. However, I have seen some where they eat the heart. Now, the reason also why I went with liver is because as a Korean girl growing up in a Korean family, we're weirdly obsessed with the health of our livers, and it just felt like more natural and organic Korean imagery to have them eating the liver, but I won't get too much into that. We're just like really weirdly obsessed with the health of our livers. The story that I noted that talks about this specifically, and one of of the stories that influenced one of the folktales in Wicked Fox is called The Fox Sister. This is when a couple desperately wants a little girl after they have 3 boys, but they're unable to conceive, and then one day the wife brings home a baby girl that she found in the forest. Now, at first they're really happy, but eventually the baby girl grows up and starts to kill and eat the livers of their livestock. The story is told more in Wicked Fox, so definitely check that out if you want to learn how it ends. The Gumiho shares many similarities with its Chinese counterpart, the huli jing, and its Japanese counterpart, the kitsune. A lot of scholars do believe that both the kitsune and the Gumiho were inspired by the Chinese version of the nine-tailed fox myth. All of the myths explain that these fox spirits exist because of longevity, meaning they've lived for a really long time, usually 1,000 years. And because they've lived for a really long time, they've gained like a higher existence as well as the ability to shapeshift. For example, the Japanese kitsune myth says they possess superior intelligence, long life, as well as magical powers. These include obviously shapeshifting, but also sometimes a Japanese kitsune could enter your dreams and have other abilities depending on the myth or the legend that you see. In China, the huli jing can be either benevolent or evil, and depending on the story, sometimes they are an auspicious sign and sometimes they are a bad omen. There's also some proof that back in the day in ancient China that they praised or even worshipped foxes. However, while the huli jing and the kitsune can be depicted as either benevolent or evil, the Gumiho has only been depicted as evil in recent folklores and fairy tales. Now, this is something that really intrigued me when I was first starting to get the idea for Wicked Fox, because when I first heard about the Gumiho, I'd only heard the traditional Korean tales where they were evil women. And then when I learned that there were other nine-tailed fox mythology out there where they could be benevolent or even good omens, that made me kind of angry that these beautiful magical women were depicted as just evil and just wanting to hurt people. And so I looked further into it and I actually found some old mythology where Korean fox spirits were benevolent and were thought of as good. Now, some scholars do think that this is because that the fox imagery in Korea has flip-flopped back and forth depending on what era you're in. For example, in original Korea, the idea of a fox was used as a negative term. Shindan, who was a wayward monk, Buddhist monk, was called a fox because of his love for women and drink, which was thought of as negative traits at the time. However, in the Shilla dynasty, some texts claim that foxes were worshipped as sacred beings. So I think that it's really interesting that the image of the fox has really flip-flopped back and forth a lot in Korean imagery, and that the Gumiho has mostly only been depicted as a malevolent spirit, and that's kind of why I wanted to explore the idea of it, similar to vampires and how a lot of modern day stories have explored the moral implications of being an immortal being who survives by killing others. The one thing that's really distinctive about the Gumiho that does not necessarily exist in the other mythologies in East Asia is the Yahooguso, which is also in Wicked Fox. It is a fox bead that the Gumiho has that man believes contains all the knowledge of the universe. It also is how the Gumiho absorbs energy from humans. Now, in some tales, the Gumiho holds the fox bead under her tongue, and the way that she absorbs energy from men is by kissing them, thus transferring the bead into the man's mouth and then absorbing his energy before taking the bead back under her tongue. In some of the legends, if the man is able to swallow the bead and look to the heavens, then he can know all the secret of the heavens. The final mythology fact is the idea that a Gumiho can get rid of her yokoi or monster side and become fully human. Now, a lot of different legends vary greatly on how this is capable, but most of them say that a Gumiho has to abstain from feeding on human flesh for a period of a certain amount of days. Some say 100 days, some say 1,000 days, but they have to abstain from absorbing the energy or eating the livers or hearts of man for this amount of time before they can sever their bond with their yokoi side and become fully human and get rid of any evil urges that they have. Okay, so that's my quick guide on the history of the mythology of the Gumiho. If you liked this video, then I'd really appreciate a thumbs up or a subscription to this channel. And if you like the idea of the Gumiho and you like reading paranormal romance set in a contemporary world, then definitely check out Wicked Fox, out in paperback on July 21st, and then its sequel, Vicious Spirits, comes out on August 18th. Thanks for joining me for this video, and I'll see everybody next time. Bye!